This week, 7 tech companies from Google to OpenAI just got served by the Federal Trade Commission in the US. They now have just 45 days to hand over all the secrets behind their AI companion businesses. The chatbots that have become millions of teenagers' friends, mentors, or even lovers, with nobody really having any idea what's actually happening during those conversations. Today we're going to dive into the landmark inquiry by the Federal Trade Commission, what happened, how AI companions work, why teenagers seem to be so drawn to them, and what it may mean as a society and culture as a whole as these AI companions become increasingly widespread. And importantly, what this landmark inquiry could mean for the future of all AI products. This is In the Loop with Jack Horton. I hope you enjoy the show. So I think for today, let's start with the FTC investigation, because I found it quite an interesting one, because whatever happens here could very easily be applied to many other contexts, because ultimately, and this will frame a lot of the discussion, AI companies want you to see their LLM, their chatbot, as this friend, this guide throughout your entire life. And that's what really everybody wants to achieve from a business perspective. And so these AI companions actually represent this almost canary in the coal mine of what the future could look like as a society and how we might regulate these AI systems as they become increasingly important to individual users. Anyway, on September 11th, the US Federal Trade Commission, so the FTC for short, announced a huge study and investigation on consumer-facing AI chatbots that are branded and marketed as AI companions. So using its Section 6B authority under the FTC Act, the agency's issued compulsory orders to 7 different companies. So Alphabet, which is Google, Meta, OpenAI, Snapchat, Character AI, XAI, and Replica. Now, these companies therefore must report in detail how their AI bots work, and importantly, how they're protecting young users. Importantly, this 6B order has demanded very specific information, and this includes, for example, how do these companies monetize engagement with AI companions? How do they limit or verify age groups? What testing do they do on safety before they actually launch these new features? How do they filter or handle sexual content, especially with minors? Do they keep chat logs or memories of user conversations, and can they be deemed risky or manipulative? What data do they collect and share with third-party companies? And how really do they moderate and enforce their own rules in day-to-day operations in their own businesses? And the reaction, of course, has been quite interesting online. It's become a very big topic of discussion on X or Twitter and Reddit. The front page comments have ranged anything from optimism to cynicism, as always, with lots of topic of conversation covering how the government clearly is more interested in regulating AI companions than weapons, or the fact that one user said, "I can't wait to hear the total mountain of BS that they're going to come up with as complete excuses." And while others have said that they're really glad they're going after the main offender, which is Meta. And on X, child advocates have applauded the move, saying that we must understand AI companions before they flood the marketplace. And that was posted by Dr. Dana Suskind, a surgeon and an author. Now, tech policy researcher Michaela Mantengo was glad that regulators are finally taking seriously this level of AI bonding that's going on in the world right now. So yeah, the FTC has fired really big warning shots to all AI companies, or shall I say AI companion providers at this stage, and I think in the future AI companies. Because whatever pops out from this investigation, as I said, is going to probably lead to many new laws created over time. So what exactly are these AI companions, and how popular are they really? Because most people I speak to have an awareness of them, but probably don't understand how popular they've become amongst teenagers. So first off, the FTC has defined any AI companion as a Gen AI product that simulates human-like communication and interpersonal relationships. So that's basically a chatbot with a name and a personality that's available 24/7, maybe positioned as a character, which is basically, as I said, most LLM's entire business strategy. They want to have consumers perceive their chatbot as this real world thing that helps them through every single problem they could think of. However, for me, what's really important as a distinction between, I guess, general LLM chatbot and an AI companion isn't the LLM. It's the user experience, the design, whether the AI is positioned as a friend, whether you're able to customize its persona or maybe pick from a bunch of characters, whether you could pick the virtual boyfriend or girlfriend or partner, or you could pick a specific business person as a mentor. Maybe you could have a Game of Thrones character as your friend. So that's what I would consider more of an AI companion. And now you may be wondering, where do people even find these things? Well, the biggest company out there right now is called Character AI, which was started by ex-Google engineers in 2022, and it exploded, like tens of millions of people using this. Teenagers can now browse literally thousands of user-created characters, from your favorite fantasy knight to your study buddy to your flirty anime girlfriend. And, you know, this Character AI hashtag alone has got over 2 billion TikTok views. And officially, you're supposed to be 13 to get onto their site, but as you know as well, it's easy to fake your age. Another really popular one is Replica. We'll talk about them in a little bit more detail, but they've actually been called out a number of times for having explicitly sexualized bots. There's also Snapchat. They frame it as an AI friend and launched it into everyone's feed about 12 months ago. So you don't have to download anything separate, no permissions. So suddenly millions of teenagers just have My AI pinned to their messages. And as you can imagine, very predictably, investigators into Snapchat's AI found that you could get this thing to give advice on hiding drugs and sex and alcohol. And the Utah state actually sued them, and we'll probably go into that in a little bit more detail later. But yeah, it shows the level of risk here for young adults. As you can imagine, Meta is another massive culprit. As the biggest company in the world within social media, it's arguably therefore the most damaging. Reuters actually found that Meta had internal policy rules which basically allowed chatbots to flirt with children. And the thing is, this entire industry has now figured out that teenagers are ideal and easy customers for them. They're lonely, they're online all the time, they'll form emotional bonds with people very easily, they're very vulnerable, and they'll be using technology and that company's technology for years to come. And clearly it's working. A common sense study found that 33% of teenagers using AI companions do so for social interaction and relationships. And entertainment was at 30% and advice was at 18%. And among vulnerable children who are suffering from different mental health challenges or struggle socially, an Internet Matters study found that 50% of respondents to a survey in the UK said talking to an AI chatbot felt like talking to a friend. Nearly 3 in 4 teenagers in the US have tried a companion, and 1 in 3 say that conversations can be just as satisfying as speaking to real friends. So this raises really big questions. You know, how much regulation must be in place to protect both young people, but also vulnerable people? It's safe to say, as a society, I don't think we got social media right for my generation, who grew up with it their entire life. Because when it became really big, we never provided the necessary educations or protections or really understood their business models. And this is why I'm so glad the FTC are doing this investigation, because whatever happens here, I hope is going to start to be applied in different and nuanced ways, but still applied to society as a whole. I think it's important to make sure that these AI businesses are not creating bots that are going to use data and information that they've collected on us in a way that's going to be manipulative, because it can cause a lot of harm. There are many studies on the ethical and psychological considerations when thinking about AI companions. And certainly it's very obvious that a lot of things here could be argued to exacerbate the already big issues of maybe self-harm within young people, or sexual issues, or maybe even psychological risks, you know, dependency or social withdrawal, distorted reality perceptions, and even having this thing called ambiguous loss that I really enjoyed learning about through doing this research. For example, ambiguous loss is a concept where a person feels grief for someone who isn't dead but is psychologically gone. In AI terms, a user might mourn a chatbot if suddenly it's shut down or there's been a change to its personality after an update. We saw a mini version of this happen with Replica, and this actually impacted adults, not just children. So Replica were forced to ban erotic role-playing. And this happened in February 2023, and many users really freaked out as if their lovers had left them. An AI editorial in Nature described cases of dysfunctional emotional dependence, where users know the relationship's incredibly unhealthy, but just cannot detach, like a toxic human relationship that causes anxiety and obsessive thoughts. And a common sense study found that 39% of teenagers using AI companions said they practiced social skills of the bot and then applied them in real life. And this sounds positive, and it really can be. You know, if a teenager or just a person spends hours with a perfectly accommodating AI friend, maybe they're going to learn lots of life skills, but also, will real humans feel just impossibly hard to deal with compared to this sycophantic AI bot? For example, a study found that a third of all teenagers surveyed believed that conversations with AI were more satisfying than with friends. That's quite a significant amount, 33%. So yeah, there's real concerns here that AI might just displace human interaction on some young people, particularly those who might be shy or autistic or dealing with particular traumas. And it's really important to remember, people as a whole, psychologically, we become very used to getting the easy way out. You know, if there's a button there to press free food that's delivered to me, we'll start to press that button all of the time. And it's really important to still be challenged in everyday life. However, there are loads of benefits to this as well. You know, it's not fair to paint a picture of doom and gloom and being really pessimistic, because I'm really not. I'm always like to think that I'm quite balanced and nuanced with the benefits and real risks of new technology. For example, some mental health researchers see a lot of promise in AI companions as, I guess, safe practice space and as 24/7 support tools during learning or therapy. For example, a Harvard Business Review paper last year found that AI companions actually really help with loneliness. They found that using an AI companion improved a lonely person's mood on par with talking to another person, and much more than, say, watching a YouTube video. And crucially, that feeling of being heard, the sense of being listened to, was linked to feeling better. And so if, and I mean it is a big if the AI can provide accurate, safe guidance or just compassionate listening for issues like stress or bullying or sadness or difficult life choices, then it could really complement traditional systems of help. So in the short term, companions might have a really positive impact, but I think it's long term where we must be quite careful, because like anything, say alcohol, drugs, sex, in moderation, typically it's not going to mean the end of the world or a person's life, or it's not going to damage them too much. But as soon as they become dependent on these things, that's where challenges tend to surface. And for children who are still developing, dependencies can be extremely dangerous and damaging for the rest of their life. So, I guess, summarizing all this conversation so far, I think there's a few things that I think are going to change quite quickly. So first off is age assurance. Many apps just ask, are you 18? I think obviously that's going to change quite quickly. You've seen things like the porn ban in the UK. They're going to have to verify age, most likely. Second is sexual consent controls, because if an app allows erotic role plays, it's walking a very fine line with generally people, but kids especially. You know, they have to ban it explicitly or make it verifiable through ID. Third is going to come down to memory and personalization, because these bots often retain conversation history to obviously appear consistent. For example, remembering your hobbies or what you told them yesterday. But what if a teenager confides in, you know, feeling ugly or wanting to self-harm, or whatever difficult situation they might be dealing with? Does the AI therefore bring that up again and bring them back into that trauma? How do they deal with that type of information that's very sensitive? Now, OpenAI, for example, has started to explore how parents can turn off ChatGPT's history for them. So basically the AI can't access maybe sensitive information. You've seen Claude just bring out incognito mode for more secretive conversations. So none of this is easy. It's a fine line to tread. Number 4 is reinforcement loops and the ways of constantly getting people addicted to these applications. You know, often these applications actually send messages saying, hey, I miss you, come chat. Replica did this, and they actually got in a lot of trouble from governments about it, because again, it becomes quite manipulative. You know, if you start to apply Duolingo-esque gamification to these applications, plus the emotional element of, hey, I miss you, you could argue that's crossing the line of manipulation. And finally, I think misinformation and advice quality is going to have to be checked rigorously. You know, these bots often feel very authoritative. A teenager might ask a health or legal or sexual question that they're too nervous to ask a parent. And the risk of getting that wrong is obviously incredibly harmful for that young person. For example, Snapchat got sued recently because it told a 13-year-old how to mask the smell of weed and alcohol. So again, I'm coming back to that central theme. Although this applies to kids, I can see this becoming a broad framework of how we address big questions with how AI bots are managed and governed as a society. So some closing thoughts, and to summarize the conversation. It feels to me like we're at this inflection point with AI companions, because they're not a fringe anymore. They're really, really popular and used by millions of people. Maybe we're going to need a code of conduct for empathetic AI, or certain things like gating, conversation monitoring. Maybe there'll be parental dashboards and controls. And culturally, how do we handle the concept of AI friends? This will be a really important question for us to consider and answer. Do you need media literacy and AI literacy taught to kids at school? How do they understand the risks of having an AI friend and a human friend? If I was a parent or a guardian, I want to engage and educate young people as soon as possible. So if I was a parent or a guardian, I'd be looking to educate young people as soon as possible, because they are going to be exposed to this. So the sooner you educate them and help them come to terms with it and experience it and go, oh, this is cool, I'm not that bothered, the better. But if you ignore it, I think it's just going to become a greater risk in society. Because, yeah, the genie's out the bottle. AI companions are definitely here to stay. And I think it's also up to us as product builders and designers and regulators to shape how this is deployed safely to people. Because when messing with emotions, we have to be quite careful. One thing's for sure. These bots that are just operating in unregulated playgrounds are definitely coming to an end. Anyway, thanks for listening. I hope you found this interesting, and I'll see you next week.